delighted now to be joined by our state representative from the 39th District, checking in via Zoom, State Representative Ryan Berman on the MegaCast with us again. Representative Berman, thank you very much for joining us.
Hey, how's it going?
We're doing good. I wish you could see us because we don't have that Zoom video hookup back to our guests. If you would see that we are the first and hopefully only broadcasters ever to broadcast with face masks on. So we're doing the best. We're kind of the studio. It's barely 6 feet in here, so we thought we'd give it a shot today, trying to comply.
Yeah, be careful with that depending on what type of mask you're wearing. I just read a story of somebody wearing one of the N95 masks while they were driving, and it restricted airflow, and he ended up passing out and crashing. I don't know where that was, but I know that is a complaint about some of these masks. Obviously makes it a little bit harder to get that oxygen in there. Also, if you're wearing glasses, it gets fogged up. Yeah, there's little tricks that you have to use to avoid some of those things.
Well, really good tips. See, this is what I love about doing the show is we get tips from everybody that you just don't see in the public as a whole. Yeah, my glasses have been getting fogged up a little bit. I would never drive with this bandana on, and I didn't think about maybe passing out because I didn't have enough oxygen. Here in the studio, Tyler, if I pass out, will you continue the broadcast in my absence?
I'll have to, yes, I will.
Okay. So, but you don't really have a co-pilot in the car that's going to be able to take over, so really good. We heard from one of our doctors, Dr. Jamie Two Wheel, earlier, too, in the show. He had another really good tip. He said, don't use your non-dominant hand when grabbing a doorknob, which kind of makes sense because your dominant hand, you might go to your face. So it's just this little stuff. So how about the big stuff going on in Lansing? Representative Berman, on Friday, Governor made her presentation and put a whole new set of orders. Meanwhile, the legislature said, Governor, we're going to take away some of your ability to put these executive orders in place. And legislature passed a provision to do just that. Needed her signature. She's not going to sign it. But you talk a little bit about why we did that and what message you were trying to get across with that.
Well, so what happened on Friday was, in the legislature, you have the upper and the lower chamber. You have the House and then the Senate. And bills can originate through either chamber. And then once it passes one, it has to go through the other. And it has a period that it has to sit for 5 days in one chamber before going to the next. So what happened on Friday is I believe the Senate passed some laws repealing the governor's 1945 Act. It hasn't come over to the House yet.
Okay.
So what the House did is, as I'm a state representative, a member of the House of Representatives, the House, all we did on Friday was passed a resolution. It ended up being a concurrent resolution that went through each chamber to set up a bicameral, bipartisan committee. So it has, I believe, 5 representatives on the committee, 5 senators on the committee, 3 Republicans and 2 Democrats on both. And it's an oversight committee to oversee our government, not just the governors and the departments, but everybody's response to this emergency crisis, to see, what the data was at what time to support whatever was going on, what was done right, what was done wrong, if anything, just to set up this oversight committee. And that's what I went in there and voted on Friday.
All right. Well, I appreciate your clarity on that. And, it gets confusing. I want to go back and, Tyler, what was that It's a Bill song that they did on, was that on Sesame Street? Or
No.
Nope.
It was Schoolhouse Rock.
Schoolhouse Rock, right. We always got to refer back to Schoolhouse Rock. We try to figure out how it all works. But no, exactly. I appreciate your thoughts on that. Do you think, though, getting out of the weeds, Representative Berman, the governor can act essentially unilaterally right now with these executive orders? Do you think that's good? Would you like to see the legislature get involved with a little bit more oversight?
I would. I mean, being an attorney myself, and when you look up our system of government and the reasons that the way it was created, the reasons why, the whole Revolutionary War, getting away from, a king, right? And whether it's a benevolent king, a dictator, setting up a system with checks and balances. And that's what we have here. And we have constitutional rights, freedoms. And in our Michigan Constitution, it sets up you have the legislative branch, the judicial branch, and the executive branch. And no branch should be having powers that properly belong to the other one. What the legislature did in 1945 and then in 1976, and what we're dealing with now, there's these legal examples of how it's translated today into this emergency, is statutorily gave the governor authority to unilaterally act in the case of an emergency, in the case of a riot, an invasion, enemy forces. That was the 1945 Act happening after World War II in case we were ever invaded. And you can't convene the legislature. The legislature doesn't have the ability to act. You have to have some type of continuity of government and give the governor these powers. Whether that's constitutional or not, that's going to end up being played out. It could potentially played out in the courts later this year. But I think it's always a good thing, whether we agree with all the actions of the governor or disagree, just having that ability to have that authority is a little bit scary. It's a little bit scary to a lot of the residents of the 39th district that I've been hearing from. And we're seeing that. And last time I was on the MegaCast, we talked about her extension or possibly extending the stay-at-home order. And I brought up some points of, I understand the ability and having to act and, make people and the concern of the safety of our residents, but not when it's logically, invalid of allowing one thing but not another when it's not designed with any risk-based formula or the data doesn't support it. And I started talking about the landscaping, golfing. People can walk on the golf course, but they can't actually, use their clubs and balls. And what we've been seeing that in bringing up these logical inconsistencies and things that don't really make any sense, the governor has just on Friday loosened those restrictions, if you will, for exactly those areas of our business sectors of the economy that we have been bringing up and trying to go from some type of arbitrary essential versus non-essential that originally these orders were set up to whether something can be done safely versus unsafe. And I believe the governor just said this morning, I think she has another press conference at 4 p.m., but this morning in a interview, she even said that it's going to be a risk-based approach from now on. And that's how it really should have been, the whole time. So, we are going in the right direction. And, but that is, having one person, going back to the original question, one person making these decisions isn't what our government was set up for.
Well, I appreciate your thoughts on that. State Representative Ryan Berman of the 39th, impacting our coronavirus MegaCast broadcast area. I thank you for your thoughts. But just to echo what you just said, you do feel the governor now, with her order on Friday and the leanings that we're getting from today's reports and what she might say this afternoon at 4 o'clock is, you feel she's going in the right direction?
I do. I feel that she's going in the right direction. Again, she said, I know one industry and a couple things that of construction and some other outdoor based industries that are allowed in, surrounding states and isn't here, that we need to start going in this direction. We have to have an exit plan. And the House, I know the Senate brought up a plan. I don't even know what it was. I've been pretty busy to review all these things. I know our own House member, we have a plan, but even with these plans, it's not necessarily, you can't make everybody happy, even everybody in your own caucus and even with your own support, because right here in Southeast Michigan, we have the most amount of cases. We're at 70-80% of all cases are in our tri-county area. And that's what I've been advocating or saying too, is we can't treat the Upper Peninsula the same as we're treating down here. And I think they're going towards, and the governor said, a more regional based approach, maybe updating to the newest federal guidelines, taking this thing, what we can safely do to open back our economy. And while I'm one vote, and maybe I get outvoted where they do a regional approach and it's not necessarily helping the businesses in my district, we're going to be on the right path and the right plan of opening things back up, getting people back to work and doing it safely. And, that's the most important part, because even if we didn't extend the state of emergency, even if the governor said, you know what, the data, and that's another thing, the hospitalizations, those are all down. The whole point of the stay-at-home order was to slow the spread of this virus. This virus is always going to be there. It was to make sure everybody didn't get sick all at once to overwhelm our hospital systems. And even here, when we have the most amount of cases in Southeast Michigan, our hospital systems are not over capacity. They are not overrun. Maybe 60%. And we just starting to get more updated data now. And we do also have to be mindful, though, of when we do open everything back up, of that second wave, if you will, or another spike, because it's always going to happen. And we just have to make sure that we have the resources and infrastructure put in place to mitigate that. But going back to my point, even if we said, all right, everything's back to normal today and everybody can go out and do things, we're not going to go back to normal. There's going to be a new normal. I don't think, and you guys there said you're wearing masks, right? Even in the broadcast booth, I see people wearing masks when they're driving. You don't need to wear a mask in your own car. You don't need to wear a mask necessarily, outdoors. It's, in these confined spaces. People have gonna and are changing their behaviors. So the government can say one thing, and it's really up to you to define how you feel and what precautions you are going to put in place, because nobody, in the polls are showing, not everybody's going to feel comfortable going back to a restaurant right away. I don't think it's going to happen. I think it's going to be gradual, and just from people's behaviors of walking up, shaking hands, hugging on people. People are going to remain socially distant for a little bit. I should say physically distant for a bit. People are going to be more mindful of wearing gloves when they're opening those door handles, or using your elbow or something else to press a button on the elevator. Because of this shift and these behavior changes, I think we're going to see a big difference in the spread of not only COVID but any other type of germs and diseases.
Well, State Representative Ryan Berman is with us from the 39th District. We really appreciate him joining us, and I appreciate all your thoughts. And I want to give you time here, because that's what's different about this show. You just can't do this on a 5-minute radio interview or a quick interview somewhere else. So I appreciate you taking time and sharing with us your complete thoughts, and it's greatly appreciated here on the show. Representative Berman, we are now beginning to see the economic impact. News out today that Livonia is going to furlough 39% of their employees. We talked to Dr. Schwartz, the Avondale School District. I mean, he's expecting the possibility they're going to see dramatically reduced numbers. He said like maybe $500 per student in state aid. That's what some of the superintendents were looking at, but we don't know what those numbers look like. You get that. That means fewer teachers in classrooms. We haven't had a chance to talk to our local municipalities yet. We will over the next couple of days. Any thoughts about what's going on from a budget standpoint, and are the conversations beginning? And do you have any idea of what the scope of this is going to look like?
Yeah, I mean, the early projections again, they're just projections. We have to see the duration and again, the scope of how this is going to be, but they're talking about billions of dollars shortfall in our budget. And, and when we're talking about opening back up the economy or going back to business, a big complaint you see out there on Facebook and people mentioning is putting profits over people. And that's not the case. People, we have to look at the overall picture, and it's not just, a pandemic. It's the long-term ramifications to the mental and physical health of all the residents, including our economic health, livelihoods, work. You're seeing hospitals, because of what's going on in non-essential surgeries, that are the bulk of their revenues, doing layoffs, furloughing employees. And some hospital systems, I just heard in some of the rural areas, are saying we have to start back up, otherwise our hospital will go out of business, and that is going to kill a lot more people than COVID ever will. It's going to be life sustaining. So you have to think about these practical considerations in making any of these decisions and opening the economy, because without businesses, without jobs to go back to, who is going to support in the hospital systems? Who is going to support the school systems? We won't have the money, right? So, all of that goes hand in hand, and we are going to be facing billions of dollars in shortfalls here. So this budget cycle and negotiating the amounts to different departments and agencies, even the school funds, it's going to be a fist fight between these departments.
Yeah,
and every penny is going to be scrutinized at this point.
I appreciate. I think you put it really well. It is going to be a fist fight, and somehow, getting through all this and untangling this mess is going to be very, very complicated, and we'll leave that one for another day. But it's right on the horizon, and I'm glad you brought up the issue about outstate hospitals, because that's an issue. It impacts us here too, because a lot of folks are going to start to travel up north, and if the hospital and the community that we visit isn't there, these hospitals have not been able to do elective surgery outstate. Neither of the hospitals here. And as a result, for some of these hospitals that have very little, if no coronavirus activity, shutting down their elective surgery, it's just taking all the money away from them. So, it is a balancing act, and it's important. The economic side of this is important. You said it well earlier. The health side of this is important. So, Godspeed to you and everyone in Lansing trying to figure all this out and sort through it. And thank you for sharing a couple of minutes with us and your thoughts today on our show. Do you have any final thoughts before we say so long?
No, just again, thanks for having me. Always a pleasure speaking with you. I'm available to anybody. Reach out at repberman.com. Call my office, email. We'll help you out, and I'll get through this together.
Absolutely. And thank you for that outstanding advice. Don't wear your mask while you're driving. I don't want anyone passing out on a roundabout in Commerce Township or West Bloomfield. It's crazy.
Okay.
It's the little things you don't think about, right, Representative Berman? It's a little advice that we can be most useful with.
All right.
Thank you very much. He is our state representative from the 39th. Representative Ryan Berman.